Think you know the Philippines? Most people imagine pristine beaches, turquoise waters, and picture-perfect island getaways. But what if everything you think you know about this country is only the surface? Beyond the postcard-perfect beaches lies a Philippines rarely seen. A world older than the colonial churches, deeper than the bustling markets, and more enduring than the tides that lap its shores. Hidden in plain sight are the keepers of tradition, the indigenous peoples whose ways of life have survived centuries of change, conquest, and globalization. These communities are not relics of the past. They are vibrant, resilient, and profoundly connected to the land they call home. Their stories are not simply history. They are living testaments to human creativity, spirituality, and survival. The calloused hands of a farmer planting rice in ancient terraces, the careful weaving of patterns that tell stories of ancestors, the voice of an elder passing wisdom to children by firelight. These are the images that reveal the true heartbeat of the Philippines. Tourists may flock to Boracay or Palawan for sun and sand, but how many know the names of the Ifugao, the Igorot, the Manyan, or the Tiboli? How many realize that their very presence, their rituals, their art, their wisdom hold answers to questions the modern world is still struggling with today? This is not just a story about the Philippines. It is a story about human resilience, about cultures that refuse to fade even as empires rose and fell around them. It is about guardians of tradition who carry centuries of wisdom in their songs, their stories, and their way of life. The Philippines beyond the beaches is a land of mountains and rivers, forests and valleys, where identity is shaped not by resorts, but by rituals, where survival has always depended on harmony with the land, and where the voices of indigenous peoples still echo with lessons we cannot afford to ignore. So let us leave the beaches behind. Let us step into the mountains, the forests, and the heart of the islands to discover a Philippines beyond the postcards, to uncover its hidden heritage, celebrate its sacred arts, and learn how, against all odds, its people have preserved tradition and thrived. What if everything you thought you knew about the Philippines was only the surface? Beyond the sandy shores and island resorts lies a nation with layers of identity that go back thousands of years. Long before Spanish galleons arrived, long before trade routes brought new religions and customs, there were already communities here with languages, rituals, and worldviews unlike anything seen elsewhere in Asia. The image of the Philippines as a tropical paradise is not wrong, but it is incomplete. Tourists arrive with visions of cocktails on the beach, snorkeling through coral reefs, or watching sunsets that paint the horizon in gold. Yet just beyond these crowded shorelines, there are rice terraces carved by human hands into mountainsides, vast forests that shelter age-old settlements, and valleys where stories are still passed down not through textbooks, but through chants, dances, and mythologies that connect people to the earth and the divine.
The indigenous peoples of the Philippines are not a small footnote in its history. They are the original architects of its cultural foundation. The Ifugao, for example, shaped the rugged Cordillera landscape into the Banawe rice terraces, often called the eighth wonder of the world. Without modern machinery, they engineered a living monument that continues to feed their communities while demonstrating remarkable ecological wisdom. For the Ifugao, the terraces are not only farms, they are sacred spaces, woven into their myths, rituals, and social structures. Move further south, and you encounter the Tiboli of Mindanao, known as the Dream Weavers. They create tinalak, a sacred abaca cloth whose designs come in visions during dreams. Each pattern is unique, carrying spiritual meaning and embodying the belief that weaving is not simply craft, but a dialogue between humans and the spirit world. Their fabric is not just clothing, it is heritage, a material expression of cosmology. In the Visayas, the Ati and Tumandok peoples maintain oral histories and agricultural traditions that stretch back centuries. They preserve rituals tied to planting seasons, harvest cycles, and ancestral veneration. For them, the land is not a resource to be consumed, but a living relative, demanding respect and reciprocity. Meanwhile, the Mangyan of Mindoro guard one of the last surviving indigenous writing systems in the Philippines, the Hanonuo script. While most written traditions were replaced or erased by colonial rule, the Mangyan have preserved the script through poetry, love songs, and inscriptions on bamboo. It is a powerful reminder that literacy in the Philippines was thriving long before Spanish friars arrived with their own alphabet. These cultures, scattered across the archipelago, represent living links to the deep roots of the Filipino identity. Their languages, often not recognized in mainstream society, number in the hundreds. Their oral epics, some lasting days when performed, echo the grandeur of world classics, yet remain grounded in local landscapes and community values. Their spiritual beliefs often revolve around harmony with nature, viewing rivers, mountains, and forests not as resources, but as sacred entities imbued with life. For centuries, mainstream narratives pushed these cultures to the margins, often labeling them as backward or primitive. Yet look closely, and you find that their systems of knowledge hold solutions to challenges modern society is only beginning to face. Sustainable agriculture, biodiversity preservation, community-based governance. These are not new inventions. They have been practiced by indigenous peoples of the Philippines for generations. To understand the real Philippines is to look beyond postcards and tourist brochures. It is to recognize that the soul of this nation does not reside only in colonial landmarks or globalized cityscapes, but in the indigenous traditions that have endured despite centuries of erasure. These communities may not dominate headlines or tourist itineraries, but their heritage shapes the identity of the Philippines in ways too profound to ignore. The Philippines is not just islands scattered in the sea. It is stories carved into terraces, sung in chants, woven into cloth, and etched into skin. When we look beyond the beaches, we discover not just beauty, but resilience, a hidden heritage waiting to be acknowledged and celebrated. To truly see the indigenous cultures of the Philippines, one must step into their daily lives, not as outsiders gazing at curiosities, but as learners humbled by the depth of their traditions. Each community carries unique ways of living that reveal how deeply they are tied to their environment and their ancestors. In the mountains of the Cordillera, the Ifugao wake at dawn to tend to rice terraces that are centuries old. Every stage of farming, from planting to harvest, is guided by rituals honoring spirits of the land. The terraces are not merely farmland, but living altars, where each stone, each canal, each patch of soil is considered sacred. Community life revolves around collective labor, known as bayanihan, where neighbors help one another without expectation of pay. For the Ifugao, the strength of their culture lies in the principle that no one survives alone. Survival is always communal. Among the Igorot peoples, traditions blend resilience with creativity. Known for their wooden sculptures and ceremonial dances, their cultural practices are inseparable from the land. A feast is not just about food, it is a renewal of social bonds and a declaration of unity with ancestors. When they perform their ritual dances, it is not entertainment. Each movement is a prayer, each rhythm a dialogue with unseen forces that sustain the community. In Mindoro, the Mangyan live in scattered settlements in forested uplands. Life here is simple, but it carries a profound sense of balance. They plant root crops, gather forest produce, and rely on rivers for sustenance. Their poetry, called ambahan, is written in their ancient script and passed down orally from one generation to the next. These verses, often sung, express love, longing, moral values, and respect for nature. A Mangyan child may grow up hearing ambahan poems not as lessons forced upon them, but as melodies of life that shape their understanding of the world.
Travel south to Lake Cebu in Mindanao, and you will find the Taboli, a people often called the guardians of dreams. Their artistry is legendary, from the weaving of tinalak cloth to the crafting of brass ornaments and beaded accessories. Yet their culture is not limited to art. It is embedded in daily practices. A woman who dreams of a pattern cannot ignore it. To weave it into cloth is her duty, for dreams are messages from the spirit world. For the Taboli, beauty is not separate from spirituality. The two are inseparable. The Kalinga of northern Luzon are known for their striking tattoos, once symbols of bravery, honor, and rites of passage. Tattoos were not decoration, but records of achievement, marks of battles fought, victories won, or social status earned. While the practice declined under colonial influence, some elders still bear these bold designs on their skin, each line telling a story no book could capture. To wear a tattoo in Kalinga tradition was to carry history on one's body, a visible link between self and community. Despite their diversity, these communities share a common thread, a worldview that sees land, water, and sky as kin. Nature is not conquered, but respected. Farming, hunting, fishing, and gathering are never done without rituals of gratitude or requests for permission. For them, every harvest, every hunt, every act of survival is sacred. It is a philosophy of life where humanity exists not above nature, but within it. Modern outsiders often look at these lifestyles as simple. But simplicity here does not mean a lack of sophistication. On the contrary, it is a form of wisdom that has allowed these cultures to thrive for centuries without exhausting their environment. The world today, struggling with climate crises and environmental degradation, has much to learn from these so-called simple ways of life. To glimpse the life of the Ifugao, the Taboli, the Mangyan, or the Kalinga, is to glimpse the resilience of a people who have carried their traditions through storms of colonization, modernization, and globalization. They are not merely survivors of history, they are guardians of identity, ensuring that the wisdom of their ancestors continues to breathe in the present. Art in the indigenous Philippines is not confined to galleries, nor is it made for decoration alone. It is lived, worn, sung, and danced. Every motif, every rhythm, every movement carries layers of meaning that connect people to their ancestors, to their gods, and to the land itself. Among the Taboli, weaving the sacred tinalak cloth is more than craft, it is prophecy. The weaver, often called a dream weaver, receives patterns through dreams, believed to be messages from the spirit world. These designs are never copied from another person's work. They are unique revelations entrusted to the weaver alone. The process of creating tinalak can take months, from stripping and dyeing abaca fibers to weaving them into intricate patterns. To finish a piece is not just to produce fabric, but to give tangible form to the unseen. When a Taboli family uses tinalak in rituals, weddings, or exchanges, they are not simply displaying artistry, they are acknowledging a sacred bond between humans and spirits.
In the highlands of Luzon, the Kalinga once etched their stories directly onto skin. Tattoos were earned through acts of bravery, milestones in life, or the performance of communal duties. Each pattern symbolized strength, fertility, or protection. A warrior might receive a chest tattoo after defending the community, while women adorned with arm tattoos were admired for beauty, skill, or spiritual roles. The body became a living canvas where history and identity intertwined. These tattoos, made with thorns and soot, hurt to receive, but the pain was part of the ritual, a reminder that honor requires sacrifice. Even today, some elders carry these bold markings, their skin speaking of a time when every line told a story of courage and belonging. Music and dance also thrive as powerful expressions of culture. The rhythmic beat of gongs, known as kulintang in Mindanao or gangsa in the Cordillera, sets the heartbeat of community gatherings. These instruments are not merely entertainment, they summon spirits, mark agricultural cycles, and accompany rituals of healing and thanksgiving. When dancers move to these rhythms, their gestures often mimic the natural world, the flight of birds, the flow of rivers, or the strength of warriors. Every performance is both an offering and a celebration. Oral traditions add another layer to this tapestry. In many communities, long epics are recited by skilled storytellers, sometimes lasting days. The Ifugao chant the hudhud, a narrative poetry sung during harvests or funeral rites. It recounts the adventures of heroes, the wisdom of ancestors, and the values of kinship and courage. The hudhud is not just entertainment, it is education, philosophy, and history combined. The words teach younger generations how to live with honor, how to respect the land, and how to uphold the dignity of their people. The Manyan, too, have their poetic form known as ambahan. Written in their indigenous script or spoken aloud, ambahan verses carry lessons about love, friendship, and morality. They are often metaphorical, weaving lessons into nature imagery, rivers symbolizing life's journey, mountains representing resilience, or forests serving as metaphors for shelter and protection. These poems remind listeners that wisdom is not abstract, but rooted in the world around them. Every artistic expression in indigenous Philippines carries a sacred dimension. Weaving is prayer, music is ritual, dance is communion, tattoos are history, and poetry is guidance. None of these exist in isolation. They are interwoven into the fabric of daily life. A cloth can be worn, but it can also sanctify a marriage. A tattoo can adorn, but it can also protect the soul. A song can entertain, but it can also summon ancestral spirits. Modern society often separates art, religion, and life. But for indigenous peoples of the Philippines, these categories are inseparable. To live is to create, and to create is to honor. Their arts are not relics for museums, but living traditions, continuing to evolve while holding on to their ancient roots. In a world that often prizes speed, efficiency, and profit, the patience and reverence found in these cultural expressions offer a lesson that beauty and meaning require time, devotion, and connection. Each thread woven, each line tattooed, each song sung is a reminder that tradition is not fragile, it is enduring, carrying the weight of generations and the promise of continuity.
Indigenous cultures of the Philippines have endured for centuries, but their survival has never been easy. For generations, they have faced waves of colonization, displacement, and cultural erasure. Today, they continue to confront challenges that threaten not only their traditions, but also their very existence as communities. One of the most pressing struggles is the issue of land rights. For many indigenous peoples, land is life. It is the source of food, identity, and spiritual connection. Yet much of their ancestral land has been taken or threatened by outside interests. logging companies, mining corporations, commercial plantations, and even government projects. Forests that once sheltered their communities have been cut down. Rivers that sustained them for centuries have been dammed. Mountains considered sacred have been quarried from minerals. To lose land is to lose culture, because their traditions are inseparable from the landscapes in which they were born. Alongside land struggles is the risk of cultural erosion. As younger generations move to cities for education or work, many are distanced from the traditions of their elders. Languages with rich vocabularies and oral histories are disappearing as global languages dominate schools and media. Practices once performed as communal rituals are now sometimes staged for tourists, stripped of their sacred meaning. The danger lies not in sharing culture with the outside world, but in reducing it to mere performance rather than lived tradition. Climate change adds another layer of difficulty. Rising temperatures, unpredictable rainfall, and extreme weather events directly impact farming, fishing, and hunting, the lifeblood of many indigenous groups. Communities that have thrived for centuries on sustainable cycles now find those cycles disrupted in ways their ancestors never experienced. The wisdom of the past remains invaluable, but the scale of the challenge has grown, testing even the most resilient traditions. Yet for every challenge, there are stories of resistance and renewal. Indigenous leaders and advocates across the Philippines are fighting for recognition of ancestral domains, often through legal battles or grassroots campaigns. Some communities have successfully regained control over their lands, turning them into sanctuaries for both culture and biodiversity. Their stewardship has proven that protecting indigenous rights often means protecting forests, rivers, and wildlife as well. Cultural revival movements are also flourishing. Schools in indigenous communities are incorporating traditional knowledge alongside modern education, ensuring that children grow up fluent in both worlds. Festivals are being reimagined not just as tourist attractions, but as platforms to teach younger generations the meaning behind rituals, songs, and dances. In Mindoro, efforts to preserve the Manyan script ensure that a unique written tradition will not fade. In Kalinga, tattooing has been revived, not as a remnant of the past, but as a reassertion of identity and pride. Technology, often seen as a threat to tradition, has also become a tool for resilience. Young members of indigenous communities use social media to share their heritage, document oral histories, and rally support for land struggles. Music, dance, and poetry, once confined to villages, can now reach global audiences, earning appreciation and solidarity. Far from being lost in the noise of modern life, indigenous voices are finding new ways to be heard. Perhaps the greatest resilience lies not in grand gestures, but in daily acts of preservation. A grandmother teaching her grandchildren to chant the hudhud. A farmer planting rice as his ancestors did, guided by ritual. A weaver sitting at her loom, patiently translating a dream into cloth. These moments may not make headlines, but they are the quiet revolutions that ensure culture survives.
The challenges are real, and the threats are significant. Yet the persistence of the Philippines' indigenous peoples proves that tradition is not fragile. It bends, adapts, and transforms, but it does not vanish. Against centuries of adversity, these cultures have not only endured, they continue to thrive, reminding the world that resilience is as much about holding on as it is about moving forward. The Philippines is more than a postcard of white sand and turquoise waters. Its soul lies in the mountains, the forests, and the hands of the people who have carried traditions across centuries. To know the Philippines is to see the Ifugao tending their terraces, the Tiboli weaving their dreams, the Kalinga wearing history on their skin, and the Manyans singing poetry in an ancient script. Yet, appreciating this heritage is not only about admiration, it is about responsibility. Indigenous cultures do not exist for display. They exist as living communities with rights, struggles, and hopes. When we travel, we can choose to support them directly by respecting sacred spaces, buying crafts at fair prices, and listening to stories without reducing them to spectacle. When we learn, we can share their voices not as curiosities, but as equal contributors to the human story. The resilience of these cultures is a reminder that progress does not have to mean erasure. In a world searching for sustainability, belonging, and balance, the wisdom of the Philippines' indigenous peoples offers more than lessons. It offers a way forward. Beyond the beaches lies a deeper Philippines, one that asks not only to be seen, but to be understood, respected, and celebrated. And once you've glimpsed this world, you carry with you not just memories of beauty, but a responsibility to honor the people who have preserved it.